From unexplained character actions to unsolved mysteries, missing backstories, and everything in between. These 10 deleted scenes would have easily solved some nagging audience questions had they been included in the final cut. Thankfully, most of them were ultimately made available as home video extras, and many have since been reposted to YouTube, so that's something at least. For now though, I am Gareth, this is Whatculture, and here are deleted movie scenes that explain confusing moments. Why does Brad Pitt still wear his wedding ring? Moneyball. Many viewers of Moneyball have noted the puzzling fact that, despite Billy Beane being divorced in the film, he's still visibly wearing his wedding ring in every single scene. Given that Billy doesn't seem to have any obsessive residual feelings for his ex-wife Sharon, why on earth is he still wearing the ring? Well, an entire subplot was removed from the film but included as an extra on the home video release, featuring Billy's new wife as played by Cold Case star Catherine Morris. This of course effortlessly explains why Billy still has a ring on his finger, painting him as a far cry from the brooding divorcee that the final cut characterizes him as. There's no word on why director Bennett Miller cut these scenes, though given that the film already clocks in at a beefy 133 minutes, it might simply have been a case of trimming the fat. The ring probably could have been pretty effortlessly painted out with CGI though, right? And speaking of Brad Pitt performances, which is your favourite of all time? Was it his work in Moneyball or something else? You let me know in the comment section down below. The lies about Luke Skywalker's father. Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi. Darth Vader revealing himself to be Luke Skywalker's father in The Empire Strikes Back is one of the biggest twists in cinema history, and was only made possible by Obi-Wan Kenobi keeping the young Skywalker and thus the audience in the dark from the very beginning. Instead, Ben told Luke that his father had been killed by Darth Vader, something that has always been a point of contention among the Star Wars fandom. In reality, it simply wasn't decided yet that this was the path the story was going to take. But in universe, why would Obi-Wan keep such vital information from the future Jedi Master? A bit weird, isn't it? Yoda did actually explain the lies and secrecy to Luke on his deathbed, though the dialogue was cut from Return of the Jedi's final edit. Obi-Wan didn't tell Luke the truth because Yoda told him not to. Yoda was counting on Luke defeating Vader, and as soon as he found out that this meant killing his own father, there was a weakness within him. Some doubt or sentiment was always going to show itself when the truth came out, and with Luke essentially being less than a Padawan at the time, with a fight against one of the greatest Jedi ever on the horizon, this was a weakness they could not afford. Why does the T-1000 pulse liquid metal near the end? Terminator 2 Judgment Day. During the climax of T2, the T-1000 begins exhibiting strange behaviors, namely its liquid metal composition occasionally pulsing over its otherwise immaculate imitation of the human form. What is the meaning of this pulsing effect? Well, I'm glad you've asked. James Cameron cut a wealth of fascinating content from T2's theatrical release, and though these were restored for various director's cuts in subsequent years, the version still typically shown on TV across the globe is the original theatrical cut. And so if you've not seen any special edition version of the film, you won't realise that the T-1000 actually spends the finale malfunctioning. As it turns out, being frozen by liquid nitrogen, shot and then reforming in an extremely hot environment has caused imperfections in the Terminator's ability to mimic. The deleted parts of the sequence show the T-1000's limbs getting caught in the environment of the furnace and unintentionally mimicking it, hence why it also pulses in an attempt to correct the issue. Additionally, this also explains how John is able to recognize which of the two Sarahs is his actual mother at the end. The imposter is experiencing form malfunctions in its feet. Bill's skill with a blade. Kill Bill Volume 2. Quentin Tarantino fills his movies with gory brutality and always has, from Reservoir Dogs right through to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And Kill Bill is no different thanks to the deadly Viper Assassination Squad. The group, comprising of O-Ren Ishii, Vernita Green, Ellie Driver, and Bud, are all violent master killers. And while David Carradine's Bill himself is one of Tarantino's most compelling villains, it's arguably because he is completely on the other end of this particular scale. Evidence of Bill being anything other than stoic and calm are few and far between, with even his final fight with Beatrix lasting no longer than 30 seconds or so. So how exactly did a man like this come to lead the deadly Viper Assassination Squad? The answer, although never truly shown in the film, is simply that he is arguably the deadliest of them all. When confronted by 5 men who want to kill him in a deleted scene, Bill dispatched of the first 4 without even taking his hand out of his pocket, before then killing the 5th with not a sweat broken. Badass. With this in mind, it's no wonder why he is at the head of this infamous team of killers. And while we're talking about deleted scenes right here, I want to know right now, what is a deleted scene that you wish they left in the finished movie? Is it Bill just killing loads of dudes or something else? Let me know in the comments section down below. What does the Hummingbird clue mean? National Treasure Book of Secrets. National Treasure Book of Secrets features a scene where Ben Gates' kidnapped mother, Dr. Emily Appleton Gates, manages to covertly inform her son that she's in trouble. She speaks a coded riddle to her ex-husband, Patrick. Find where the moon touches the earth and release the hummingbird. How lovely. In the film, we then see Ben and company catch up to Emily and her villainous captor, Mitch Wilkinson. But it's never explained how the clue let them know what was up. There is actually a deleted scene which explains the significance of the hummingbird, though. Ben quizzes his father about the riddle and realizes that his mother was referring to a myth she told him when he was a child, of the maternal hummingbird who sacrifices herself to save her family from destruction. Reading between the lines, Ben realizes that his mother is in trouble and quickly calls her, only for Wilkinson to answer the phone and confirm that she has indeed been kidnapped. According to director John Turteltaub, the scene was cut for the sake of pacing, given the film's eventual 124-minute runtime. Even so, considering it's a pretty fundamental aspect of the narrative logic, it is a totally ridiculous exclusion. What a silly Turteltaub. J. Jonah Jameson's Spider-Man's Secret. Spider-Man 2. There is just so much to love about Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. One of the biggest things being J. Jonah Jameson. J.K. Simmons portrayed the character to absolute perfection, being a true test of Peter Parker's patience and often his morality. That said, did Jameson actually really hate Spider-Man? Based on everything the character has shown on screen, well, yes, with the exception of one moment. So when the Green Goblin burst into the Daily Bugle and grabbed Jameson by the throat, asking about who brought him the pictures of Spider-Man, Jameson could have easily pointed him in Parker's direction to get the ball rolling on the hero's downfall. But he didn't. Rather, he stood his ground and lied to the Goblin's face, telling him he did not know. Now, he could have been protecting Parker, but old J. Jonah never seemed like the most scrupulous man in the world, did he? And odds are he'd have sold Peter's skin to save his own in a heartbeat. No, instead, the answer comes in a deleted scene from Spider-Man 2 that shows the gruff old man wasn't as hard on the web-slinger as he made out. Yep, that is Jonah in the spider suit right there, look at him go. Would anyone but a super fan of the superhero put on the suit and jump around the office like he did? Why does Tex Richmond hate the Muppets? The Muppets 2011. Beyond being a cartoonishly greedy oil magnate who wishes to destroy the Muppet Theatre in order to drill for oil, why does Tex Richmond loathe the Muppets quite so much? It's clear there's more to the story, but the movie sadly never elaborates. The truth is actually unveiled in an extended version of the hilarious Tex Richmond song partially performed in the film. Originally, the song went on much longer with a verse where Tex explains the incident which drove him to hate the Muppets. On his 10th birthday party, the Muppets were on hand to play for him and all his friends. And while his friends laughed away, Tex didn't know how to laugh, resulting in him being roundly mocked by his so-called friends. Since that day, Tex has cursed the Muppets' mere existence. So there it is, folks. Mystery solved. David learns about the aliens' tech, Independence Day. It doesn't matter how good or popular a movie is, if there is a plot hole, or at least a perceived plot hole in the story, there is a risk of it overshadowing just about everything. Take, for example, Roland Emmerich's Independence Day. The film is beloved, certainly, but there is always the looming question of how exactly Jeff Goldblum's David Levinson was able to infect the invading alien tech with a computer virus. Audiences wondered for years exactly how this was possible. And it wasn't until writer-producer Dean Devlin addressed the subject years later that some answers were finally given. In spite of the aliens being described as much more technologically advanced than humans, the programming structure used was based around binary code, something that was relatively simple for David to decipher, similarly to how he figured out the countdown with their signals at the beginning of the film. There is actually a deleted scene that shows David studying the tech a little further and discovering how the communications worked. This context right here here would have definitely been very useful later on. But no, it was left out of the film. Why is Scotty so upset about Peter's death? Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. If you've seen only the theatrical cut of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, you're probably wondering why Scotty is so cut up about the death of Engineer's mate Peter Preston, who dies from injuries sustained during Khan's attack on the Enterprise. A crew member died, bravely and all, but why is Scotty of all people showing so much outward emotion at this single act of sacrifice? Well, the director's cut explains the connection between Scotty and Peter in its first act, when Scotty tells Kirk that the boy is his sister's youngest, therefore making him Scotty's nephew. Without this information, Scotty bringing Peter to the sick bay and being so utterly struck with grief as he dies feels inconsistent with his character. But a few scant seconds of dialogue really do make all the difference here. Thanks for checking out this video today, folks, and if you're enjoying what you're watching, then hit that subscribe button down below for more of this What Culture stuff in your day. Why Nala was so far away from home, The Lion King. In order to really get invested in a movie, an audience often has to suspend their disbelief and not ask the question that desperately needs to be asked. The Lion King is one of Disney's most popular outings ever. But even the 1994 classic is not free from this. After Scar blamed Simba for the death of Mufasa, the would-be king ran far, far away from the Pride Lands to a life of peace. However, that all changed when he crossed paths once again with Nala, his childhood best friend and betrothed. His old life and all his responsibilities came flooding on back. Lovely. Maybe it was the rush of emotion, but Simba never really seemed to ever question what Nala was doing so far away from Pride Rock in the first place. The answer is actually given in a scene just creepy enough to earn going unused. But it definitely would have eliminated any doubt. Literally, the second that Scar decided he wanted a queen, Nala entered his cave and he made his decision. He wanted her to bear his children, and he wasn't intent on giving her any choice in the matter. In the end, she refused and so was banished from her home by her king forever, left to wander the same lands as Simba until they finally met once again. Why is Phil trapped in a time loop? Groundhog Day. As wonderful a movie as Groundhog Day definitely is, it never explains the nature of Phil Connors being trapped in a time loop. Audiences have naturally assumed it's somehow related to karma and how Phil chooses to interact with the world. But there is absolutely nothing in the film which concretely confirms the force behind the loop. But there was a scene which once did. This moment was deleted in the truest sense of the word, as it wasn't ever actually filmed and was scrubbed from the screenplay during the drafting stage. Producers urged co-writer Danny Rubin to include an explanation for the time loop in the second draft of his script, and so he conjured up a vengeful ex-girlfriend of Phil's called Stephanie, who Phil dumps right at the start of the movie. In return, she literally opens up a magic book called 101 Curses, Spells and Enchantments You Can Do at Home, and places a curse on Phil for how he's treated her, causing him to become trapped in the loop. Well played, eh? Ultimately, the second draft is said to be extremely close to the third and final one, though the producers ultimately decided that the reasoning was better left ambiguous. So while this explanation isn't strictly canon, it's definitely the closest we're ever gonna get to it. And honestly, it fits well enough, doesn't it? Faramir's motivation, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Quite famously, the extended editions of the Lord of the Rings trilogy are widely regarded as superior to the theatrical releases. Upon hearing of Elrond calling a meeting and guessing that the One Ring had been found, Denethor sent Boromir to Rivendell with the task of bringing the weapon back to Gondor. Though this for sure makes Boromir a far deeper and more conflicted character throughout the Fellowship of the Ring, it is Faramir whose motivations are revealed more so. Boromir's younger brother asked to go to Rivendell in an effort to prove his quality and worth to the father that he loved, yet who despised him in turn. But he was shut down as only Denethor could. What a dad. This goes a long way to explaining why Faramir acted how he did when Frodo and the ring fell into his lap, and why he was so desperate to have it. It all makes sense. How does Plenty O'Toole find Tiffany Case's house? Diamonds are forever. How does Bond girl Plenty O'Toole end up at diamond smuggler Tiffany Case's house, where she's mistaken for Tiffany and subsequently drowned by assassins Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd? Well, many of Plenty O'Toole's scenes were cut from Diamonds Are Forever, meaning her arc throughout the film is scarcely coherent at best. But a deleted scene actually easily explains how Plenty wound up at Tiffany's house. In the scene, Plenty returns to 007's hotel room after being infamously thrown into the pool, where Bond is busy getting down to business with Tiffany. Plenty then rifles through Tiffany's purse to find the address to her house, heads there, and is presumably caught by Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd. Easy as that, really. Ken and Harry's past in Bruges. Comedies really don't get much darker than In Bruges. Not many people could pull off a movie based around someone accidentally shooting a young child through the head and make it as funny as it was. But that holy trinity of Martin McDonagh, Colin Farrell, and Brendan Gleeson, they made it work. It wasn't just funny though. There was a real heart and emotion to the film. Not just from Ray's shaken emotional state, but from Ken's willingness to protect him, even against Ray Fiennes' Harry. The latter, the pair's boss, wanted Ken to kill Ray for what he had done. But Ken was defiant in defending his friend. This was such a big deal. So what fueled the loyalty that was so difficult to break in defense of Ray? Well, in a deleted, far from finished flashback scene, Ken's partner was killed by a detective. Harry, played by none other than Matt Smith here, strolled straight into the police precinct and beheaded the murderer as retribution. It would be hard to ever turn your back on such a big moment as that, which is what makes Ken's decision to side with Ray so momentous. Why does Mia say Vincent Vega in a weird low voice? Pulp Fiction. When Mia Wallace and Vincent Vega enter Jack Rabbit Slim's twist contest, you'll probably remember the peculiar way in which Mia announces Vincent's name. A distinct low drawl that feels a little out of place. What is the reasoning for this? The mode of address makes a little more sense once you've seen a deleted scene from their prior hangout back at Mia's home, where she performs a mock interview of Vincent using a video camera. At the start of the interview, Mia asks Vincent his name, and he responds in exactly the same low, slow drawl that Mia mimics at Jack Rabbit Slim's. It's not that the moment makes no sense at all without the deleted scene, but it definitely provides a more specific reference for it all the same. How John McClane rumbled Hans Gruber. Die Hard. Is John McClane the ultimate action hero? I think he is. McClane could do the improbable. But at one point during Die Hard, he did what seemed impossible. When Hans Gruber went in search of the detonators to his explosives, he crossed paths with John McClane, who may well have taken him for a terrorist had the former not been able to pull off a convincing American accent. He revealed himself only when John had given him a gun. But it was empty all along. McClane knew that Bill Clay was one of the terrorists, but nothing that Gruber did gave the game away, so how did he know? Well, according to screenwriter Stephen E. D'Souza, there was a scene when the terrorists first arrived at Nakatomi in which they synchronized their watches, revealing that they all wore exactly the same style. As McClane took down more and more of the bad guys, he realized this, and even told the police on the ground. So when he saw Bill Clay with the same watch, he knew he was being lied to. Ultimately, the scene was cut as it betrayed that they had brought no ambulance with them as a means of escape, an aspect that was only added later to the story, and required a bit of editing earlier in the film to make it work. Now continue your YouTube journey with Whatculture by tapping on another video right here. Have fun! Why does RoboCop still have Alex's human hand? RoboCop 2014. The 2014 RoboCop remake is a pervasively mystifying piece of work, with many fans left baffled by, among other things, the decision to have Alex Murphy keep one of his human hands. In Paul Verhoeven's 1987 original, Murphy has both of his hands replaced with a more durable cyborg equivalent. What possible benefit could there be to giving a gun-toting man-machine hybrid a fleshy human hand? Well, a deleted scene featured on RoboCop 2014's home video release explains that Murphy's right hand was saved at the request of Omnicorp CEO Raymond Sellers, whose father always told him that you can tell a lot about a man by his handshake. The idea, presumably, is that it will provide a flesh and blood link between RoboCop and anyone he shook hands with out in the field. Though, for whatever reason, this was cut and the movie left yet something else for audiences to be puzzled about. Yay! Why was Fort Cedric abandoned? Dances with Wolves. Early on in the film, Lieutenant John J. Dunbar is sent to the Fort Cedric outpost. Though when he arrives there, he finds the fort deserted. This leads to him rebuilding the fort himself, as sets the rest of the movie's events in motion. And yet, despite this being such a pivotal event, the movie left yet something else for audiences to be puzzled about. Yay! Why was Fort Cedric abandoned? Dances with Wolves. Early on in the film, Lieutenant John J. Dunbar is sent to the Fort Cedric outpost. Though when he arrives there, he finds the fort deserted. This leads to him rebuilding the fort himself, as sets the rest of the movie's events in motion. And yet, despite this being such a pivotal event, we're never actually told why Fort Cedric was abandoned in the first place. Given the film's 181-minute theatrical runtime, it's not unreasonable that some material was cut. Though almost a full hour of deleted scenes were restored for the epic home video director's cut. One such scene actually explains how Fort Cedric came to be deserted too. The garrison of soldiers posted there had been worn down from attacks by Native American soldiers and the theft of their horses. And so after receiving no support from Major Farnborough, they decided to up and abandon their post shortly before Dunbar gets there. Of all the scenes cut from the theatrical release, this is surely the most important, right? But they still decided to chop it away. The fools.